Hello, this is Bill Webb, aka Billy Indiana. Today I'm going to do a top 10 list for games that I played in 2022 that were new to me, but that were released prior to 2022. So I'm going to count down my top 10 and tell you what I thought briefly about each of those games that were new to me. So in 2022, I played over 150 different games, over 500 gameplays, and 130 of the games were new to me. So I played a lot of games that I had never played prior to 2022. And many of them were older classics that I haven't had a chance to play before because I'm relatively new into the gaming hobby. Others were some that were newer that I missed out on in 2021, for instance. And so I'm going to count down the top 10, and I'll put a list of approximately my next 10 or 15 below down in the description so you can see some of the other ones that I really love that just didn't quite make the cut on this top 10. But again, these were all new to me, had never played them prior. So number 10, this one is Adventures of Robin Hood by Michael Menzel. It's a Cosmos game. And the thing that really stood out to me on this one was a couple things. I love the art of Michael Menzel. We've loved the Legends of Andor games. And I just like what he does in his designs. Legends of Andor is one of my top games of all time. My wife and I and our son have played it so much. We love it, have great adventures. And when I heard that this one was coming out, I was all excited about it. And this one has some unique twists. It's got that kind of timing mechanism of how long the days last, and you're trying to beat the timer, and yet you're going through an adventure. And this one has a hardbound book that you use to kind of guide you through the game. And it's got a tutorial that sort of walks you into the game and teaches you how to play, much like Legends of Andor does. And I love the movement where you have these different pieces that tell you how far each character can move. I love how you're drawing tiles and tokens and wooden pieces out of the bag to determine your interactions and who goes next. And it's just, there's so many unique things about this. And it being a campaign game, and the fact that my wife and I played it at least 10 times, I forget the exact number, but we went through every adventure and then went back to a splitting point, a kind of a tree or a fork in the road, and went back and played all the other adventures that we missed by going down the other fork. I just had so many fun memories from my wife and I on this one that it had to make that top 10. It's not the deepest game. It doesn't have the most, interesting and intriguing mechanisms, but there are just a few really cool mechanisms like the movement, the fact that it's got kind of a board where you pull pieces out like an advent calendar, and the hardback book kind of guiding you through it and telling you the story. There were enough unique things in there that made this one stand out, but really it was the time we had playing together, trying to unpack and out-puzzle the storyline to figure out where we needed to go and who we needed to talk to. And if you fail, you could go back and try again, and it was different because you get different branches and you would encounter different people because those little advent pieces are different where they're at in different setups of the game. So very interesting. Really loved the Adventures of Robin Hood. It's not necessarily one that I'll go back to because I already know all the stories, unless they put out a new book or an expansion for it. So that's why it's number 10, even though it did really bring us a lot of great times together in 2022. Number 9 is one that I don't own, but I've played it multiple times with other people's copies, and I've played it on is it BGA or Steam? I can't remember. I played it a bunch online, and I think actually both BGA and Steam, if I'm not mistaken. And it is Castles of Burgundy, the Stefan Feld classic from 2011. Oh, and by the way, the Adventures of Robin Hood is a 2021 release. But Castles of Burgundy, a 2011 original. The board game version that I played, I think, was a 2019 kind of newer, advanced, or kind of cleaned up version. And I've actually backed the GameFound project, I think it was, with all the advanced pieces and all the different expansions. So I've really been loving Castles of Burgundy. Having only played the board game, I think actually the physical game once, and then having played online the rest of the time, I'm really excited to see how this new GameFound one's going to kind of make it prettier. But I love the choice of the dice, how you're trying to figure out, okay, I've got these two numbers. How am I going to use them? Am I going to use them? Do I need to use them to get more workers? Am I going to use them to purchase a tile from the market? Am I going to use them to place a tile? There's so many interesting things to think through, and just love the puzzly nature of most of Feld's games. But Castles of Burgundy was a lot of fun, and number 9 on this list. And it's kind of hard. I want to argue with myself and put it higher on the list because I really love it. but some of these other games just caught my attention for different reasons. And so it's tough to decipher when you get to the top 10 out of 130 new games. But yeah, this one was one that's definitely in that top 10, and I'm going to slot it right in here at number 9. Number 8 is The Ancient World. This is a Red Raven game, and I've been wanting to play this one for quite a long time. Allison from Better Half Reviews content channel has been telling me I need to play this, and then a friend of mine down in Camarillo volunteered to teach it to me, and just had a great time. I played a 3-player game, and you know, the Red Raven art by Ryan Lockett is just always amazing, and this one's from 2014. But there were so many unique things. It's a worker placement game, although it didn't, with 3 players, it didn't seem to be super competitive on which spots to take. But you did have to think through the order that you were going to take them. And then there was this card sort of tableau building that you had to think through. And then there were these titans that you had to fight off, or they were going to attack you. And so you had to make sure you had, you know, soldiers and the ability to attack, but you had to also think through the timing. And this round, am I going to let it attack me, or am I going to have to go for it? And can I knock it out? And there was a little bit of randomness in which titans came out, but then you could choose which ones you wanted to battle ahead of time. Just so many little things to think about. It surprised me. I knew by the cover I was going to love the art, and I just happened to love all the Red Raven art. But when I got to playing it, and I typically love worker placement games as well, when I saw that tableau building and I saw that almost the storyline kind of panning out as the titans are coming, and oh man, I got to figure out a way to battle those, or I'm going to have a rough round here. There were so many little unique things to it that it's also my top 10. I'm going to slot it at number 8. Like I said, though, it's hard to kind of rank these because they all were such great experiences and all such good games that I really loved. All right. Number 7 is another one I don't own. It's from 1999, and it is Bus by Splotter Games. And Bus is, when I saw the box, my friend owns it, and when I saw the box, I was like, okay, it looks kind of like a really old school kids game or something. Then we open it up, and actually the pieces inside are a little bit better than I thought, but nothing super fancy. Obviously, it's a Splotter game, and they're not necessarily known for their overproduction, so it's pretty simple. But it was so interesting to try to figure out how to make the routes, when to do the different actions to make those routes. And you're competing for spots, and you're racing to spots, and there was just so much to think about with that. And it seemed like such a simple game, but you're having to kind of vie for the actions on the action board, and then you're also having to vie for the locations on the map board. And so you're constantly thinking about what and trying to predict what other people are going to do. And if you take the action at certain times, it's more valuable, and at other times it's less valuable. There's just so many little tiny decisions to make that added up to a really brain-burning, puzzly game, and a lot of player interaction, but not really attacking, much more of trying to get right in front of him in the turn order, or, you know, beat him to a spot, or there's just a lot of little things that I really loved about it, because I'm not really into kind of in-your-face, head-to-head attack, but I like when there's some player interaction, and I thought Bus really hit a nice sweet spot. It's really hard to find unless you're willing to pay a lot of money for it. So I'd love to add it to my collection at some point, but for now, I'll just be satisfied when I have the opportunity to play with my friend and using his copy. So that's 10, 9, 8, 7. All right, now we're at 6. And number 6, when I first started playing this game designer's games, I was pretty overwhelmed. And but when I played this game, as complex as it is, and as interwoven as so many rules are, and even some of the rules seem kind of, I don't know if finicky is quite the right word, but trying to piece together how things fit, this one, for whatever reason, seemed to make sense to me thematically. And this one is On Mars, and it's a heavy box. On Mars by Eagle Gryphon Games, a Vital Lacerda game. All of Vital Lacerda games are deep. I mean, they're all, really heavy on the rules. The player aids are massive. But there are several things about this one. I like the theme. I love the art. The components are incredible. That's pretty much true about most Eagle Gryphon games. But for me, the action selection and deciding when you were going to be on Earth and when you're going to be on Mars and how long you're going to stay on Mars, and you don't want to miss the ship going back if you need to go back and get supplies, but you also don't want to get stuck on Earth, and just trying to figure out where I needed to be. And then there's also the different cards that you're purchasing and you're putting into your system, and you're trying to figure out how you can combo those things. And then you've got the actions I forget the name of the other board. It's been a little while since we played. It was early in the year, but there's those other actions that you're selecting. And again, there's a little bit of competition for those, but just the way everything fit in and the way you're building out Mars and trying to, again, kind of vie for space and beat people to certain spots and gain the advantages of certain spots. Just so many things that I loved about On Mars. And I did actually pick up the expansion, but I haven't had a chance to play that yet. My gaming group had a chance to get together and play a couple times, but I was out of town when they did. And so really looking forward to trying the cooperative version and the one versus many version of that expansion. But just as it is, I really enjoyed On Mars a lot, and I can't wait to get a chance to play it even more. Next up, number 5, another older one. This one's from 2014, a Rudiger Dorn game. This was a TMG DLP game, and there's lots of different expansions and things to add onto this, although I haven't tried any of them, just played the base game. But I love the bag building. I haven't played very many bag building games, but this is one. The Adventures of Robin Hood had a bag, and you're pulling chips and tokens and things out. And this was interesting too, and I loved how you're thinking through, it's not really worker placement, but you're deciding where to send those workers, but you're also having to make sure you have the right workers at the right time, and you're moving up on several different tracks, and I tend to like games with tracks as well. And so just, again, the interconnectedness of all the decisions you have to make, I feel like that's what is really what's drawing me to a lot of these games, is how it's not just that you have this good decisions to make, it's how they interweave and how they interact. And okay, I need to do this so I can do that, and if I do that, then it'll let me do this, and I can pair these two things up. And so you're having to kind of plan out a couple turns in advance, and yet things are changing as your opponents are making decisions and switching things up too, and sometimes what you thought was going to work before might not. And so Orleans is another one that I just really loved. And again, hard to really rank these, but for now I'm going to say it's number 5 on this list. Next up, a lot of people have loved this one, and a lot of people had it as one of their top games in 2021. In 2021, I hadn't played it yet. But now I have Ark Nova, and there are several things that I love about Ark Nova. Obviously, the box looks incredible. I'm not as big of a fan of the photo art for the animals. It's not bad. I mean, it's not like the Terraforming Mars clip art, but I do. Yeah, I like more artistic drawings and paintings and pictures, but they're pretty good. But I love the theme, animals and the zoo. But I also like how it's not, you do have to build up the enclosures, and you have to get the right enclosures, and you have to have the right space, and putting certain things in certain parts of your park or your zoo is better for you. But yeah, that's not it entirely. You're also trying to do these conservation decisions, and you're working with other agencies. And I really love the action selection. You got the 5 actions, and you're trying to say, okay, if I wait until this one, they're constantly shuffling each turn, and you're making a decision. Okay, well, if I wait and take it when it's down here, it's more powerful. But if I take it right now, it's less powerful. But I really need to take it right now. And so you're constantly making those hard decisions of which action you want to take. And then I also like in Terraforming Mars, where you have the tags. And I was just playing a game the other day that had tags. Mosaic, and I really enjoyed that. It's actually a 2022 release, so stay tuned for another video. But yeah, I like games where there's tags and you're trying to collect them in sets or get certain patterns of them, and you're, yeah, that collection, that set collection kind of idea with those tags, I really also enjoyed from Ark Nova. And this is a Matthias Wiege game. It's from Capstone Games and Furlan Games. So really love this one. I still haven't had a chance to play with my wife, and I'm really excited to. I think she really loves Terraforming Mars, so I think that tag aspect is something she's going to enjoy, trying to think through how to pair those up and mark those up and build out kind of a tableau, so to speak. But I also know she just loves animals, and she's worked at several different zoos throughout her career. And so I think she's going to really enjoy this one. The kind of knock on this one is it does take a long time. It takes a little bit just to set everything up, but it also takes a long time to play. And so while I love it, sometimes it's harder to get to the table because of that, but it's pretty high on this list because there are so many other things that I really do love about Ark Nova. All right, next up. This one's a board and dice game, and this is Teotihuacan, City of Gods. And this one is one where, by Daniel Tascini, that when I first saw it, again, I was a little overwhelmed, and I was trying to figure out, okay, how does this work? We're building up this pyramid, we're going around this track, but the way the dice work in this one, and how if you can get the dice together, you get a more powerful move, but if you get them together, then it's hard to get all the different actions you need because they're all on one part of the board. And every time you use the actions, and your dice are kind of advancing, and then eventually they retire, and trying to figure out, okay, how many dice do I need to have? When do I need to go? I think it's called a temple. There's just so many things, again, that interweaving of decisions. but I really like the way the dice move around the board and determine your actions, determine the strength of your actions, and having to plan that out just right. And sometimes you want to put all those dice in one spot and just get an amazing turn in that one spot. But then it might take you a couple turns to sort of spread them out and get them where you need to do the other actions. So there's some give and take, some push and pull with that. But I really love Teotihuacan, City of Gods. And I then ended up adding the expansions, which I haven't had a chance to try yet. So I'm looking forward to that. Now I see they're coming out with a big box. Now I've got to decide, okay, well, do I sell this with all the expansions or do I go for the big box? I keep what I've got. So first world problems, right? But yes, Teotihuacan, City of Gods, another great one. Number 3 on my list here. Next up is a game by TMG and Game Brewer. And this is by Andreas Stedding, and it is Gugong. And Gugong, I love the theme and the art of this one. Just that kind of ancient theme and Asian theme. And I love the kind of the bribing that you're thinking. Is it bribing? Is it not? It's even interesting the way it's explained in the rules. How are you bribing or are you not bribing? But it's part of the culture. And living overseas for a lot of time, understanding culture and understanding differences in culture was a big thing for me to try to learn when we were living in Indonesia. And just the Asian culture is fascinating to me. And I know all Asian cultures are different, but there are certain things that sort of trend through many of those Asian cultures that I really respect and admire. And so that's part of it. But I also love in this game where you're choosing which action to take and you're choosing how to play your cards. And so it's this really tough decision of when do I want to use my best cards and when do I need to go to this action and what if it gets blocked by another person. And so, and you're trying to work your way up this track, but you need to work up different aspects of the game in order to work up that major track. So there's just so many things about this that stood out to me. It felt really unique, the way you use the cards and the way the player interaction worked. So all of those things, theme, art, player interaction, the interweaving of the mechanisms, the card play, all of those things really impressed me about Gugong. And so it is one of my best games or favorite games that I played in 2022 that were new to me. And the last one, again, I feel like in some ways I could have put any of these games as number 1, but this is the one that for today ended up being number 1 in my top 10. And that is Pax Pamir 2nd Edition by Cole Worley and Whirligig Games. And this is, again, such a unique game. And it's also beautiful. You have this cloth board. You've got these clay pieces, or maybe there's some kind of ceramic that you're using as troops and you're using as roads. And so you're standing them up, laying them down. You're trying to think about area control out on the board, but you're building this tableau of cards, but you're limited in that. And so you're having to decide, okay, do I want cards that are in this faction or do I want cards in a different faction? And do I want to switch factions? And so you're either you're one of 3 factions the whole game, and so but you can switch. And so, do I want to be Russians or do I want to be the English? And you're trying to decide, okay, well, who am I siding with? Who am I going to try to, or am I going to try to go on my own? And there's just so many interesting, almost negotiation feel to this game, even when you're not like verbally negotiating all the time. Kind of thinking about, okay, do I need to switch factions so I'm on the same as that person for a while and then maybe switch back? But if I do that, then these cards that I've been collecting aren't as powerful or might not be useful at all. And so there's just so many, again, integrated decisions. The one knock on this one that kind of, and I haven't played it enough, I've only played it a few times, but the one knock that it kind of felt like towards the end, in the end, it's like, okay, one of us is going to win if this happens or when this happens. And if it happens on your turn, you're going to win. If it happens on my turn, I'm going to win. And it felt a little bit like right at the end, you lose a little bit of control, perhaps. And maybe that was just in the couple of plays that we had. And so it kind of felt like the last time I actually did win, but it felt a little lucky because if a certain card had turned over, then the person before me, 2 people before me would have won. And then if another card turned over, the person in front of me would have won. But because those cards didn't turn over, I won. And so there was that little bit of predetermination or something that I'm not sure without more plays how that's going to factor, but the uniqueness of how the game plays really struck me. And so this was my favorite one of my top favorites. And for now, I'm going to say it's my favorite game that was new to me in 2022. So there you have it. 10 games that I played in 2022 that were new to me, a little bit about why I love them. And like I said, I'm going to put down below a lot of other games because I played a ton of others. Just some honorable mentions I'm looking at on my list here on the screen. Role Player Adventures was just terrific. My wife and I played that for hours and hours and hours. Trajan, an older game. Tigris and Euphrates, an older game. Goa, an older game. Everdell, I just finally played in 2022. So many games. Terra Mystica, Babylonia. I could go on and on. There's so many games that were new to me that I really loved. I'm going to put some of those down below, and it was really hard to cut some of those off the list because I really did enjoy so many of the new to me games that I experienced in 2022. So grateful for my friends that in our gaming group that are always willing to teach new games or new to me games, and just the experiences that I had at the World Series of Board Gaming, getting to try some new games. So these are some of my favorites from 2022. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you click on that like button down below. If there's anything about these games that you love, let me know about that as well. If you have questions about them, you can ask those in the comments below. I'd love to hear what your top few games of 2022 were. What were your favorites that weren't necessarily new games in 2022, but were some of your favorites? As always, thanks for watching. This is Billy Indiana, signing off.